Welcome to this breakout on Dementia Friendly America, but really a focus on success stories and community examples. So my name is Meredith Hanley. I'm the Director of Community Capacity Building, which includes my role in overseeing the Dementia Friendly America initiative, which is administered out of US Aging, which is a national nonprofit membership association. And not only does US Aging administer Dementia Friendly America, we're also the National Membership Association for the area agencies on aging across the country and serve as a voice on Capitol Hill for the Title VI Native American aging programs. Today, we are also joined by Mark Haberman, Planning and Resource Director with Aging and Long-Term Care of Eastern Washington, Loiacono, Regional Director for Eastern Washington and North Idaho with the Washington State Chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, Britta Willson, lead with Dementia Friendly in the Gorge, and she works as a program coordinator for Providence Volunteers in Action, and Dr. Flavia Walton, the lead for the South County Action Team for the Dementia Friendly America initiative in Prince George's County, Maryland. So just a few quick housekeeping items, as I think we've been doing throughout the conference here, but as per usual, just please be on mute unless you're speaking. We do encourage the use of the chat throughout so you can share your comments or thoughts. In addition to any questions that you might have for the speakers, you can type into the chat and you can type those in at any time, and that would really be welcome. So as you think of a question, you can type it in, and that will help me organize the Q&A session at the end of the presentations here today. We'll do our best to get to as many of the questions as we can. So in this session today, I'll first share a quick review of the Dementia Friendly America model just to have that context and the framework before the presenters then go. But our focus really is on sharing the success stories and sharing the lessons learned from the three communities that will be sharing their work. And it's a nice array of communities that you'll hear from today. You'll be hearing from Washington's first dementia-friendly community, Spokane County, and they'll provide an update on their progress. The Dementia Friendly in the Gorge effort, which is focused on counties on either side of the Columbia River Gorge, and they'll share about successes, particularly in rural areas. And then one of the original pilot communities to adopt the Dementia Friendly America model, and that's Prince George's County, Maryland, will offer lessons learned over the past 6 years. So we hope that the session serves to provide some inspiration, but also just some practical and hands-on examples of what is possible in your own community. So with that in mind, I'll share some brief background on Dementia Friendly America, in case you're not familiar. So DFA started in 2015. It's based upon a model that came out of Minnesota called Act on Alzheimer's, and it promotes the idea of cultivating dementia-friendly communities by working across community sectors. And also really the idea that dementia is a community issue that should be addressed at the community level. When you look at stats like 80% of people with dementia live at home or with family, 83% of care is provided by family, friends, and unpaid caregivers. Approximately 1 in 5 people with dementia live alone. And the vision really is that every part of a community can play a role and can work together to help foster that more dementia-friendly culture. So whether it's like businesses and banking who can support customers with dementia, whether it's law enforcement and first responders who can recognize signs of dementia and then respond accordingly, whether it's healthcare systems that can do things like promoting early diagnosis and then connecting individuals with community supports, whether it's faith communities who can welcome people living with dementia and their care partners through buddy programs or specialized services or other types of accommodations. Local governments, of course, have a huge role, housing and transportation and public spaces, and of course the first responders situated within local government, but also more broadly community members and also the whole network of community-based services and aging services providers and helping to support people living with dementia. There are a couple key principles within the DFA model for dementia-friendly communities. One is really to include and involve people living with dementia, as well as care partners in meaningful ways to help guide and shape that initiative. And also that the work really can't be done by, one person or one organization. It should be done by an action team. That's the term we use. Teams can be called anything that you wish, really, steering committee, task force, but the idea that this is a collaborative community effort and kind of driven by that grassroots support. And we do have multiple resources. We have a community toolkit that helps to guide communities through a process. And it's really a kind of process. We outline it as 4 key steps, but where communities can kind of pick and choose the tools within those steps that help to support their work and to support their journey. So hopefully that's a little bit of helpful context as you then hear the speakers present today. We'll now get into the heart of the agenda. The speaker order will be Joel and Mark discussing the work in Spokane, Britta speaking then about the Gorge region, and then Flavia then speaking about Prince George's County, Maryland. And they will provide background on their effort and overview of their communities, but also challenges, successes, and advice for new communities or ones that are considering doing this type of work, or existing communities, because it's always great to hear what's happening in other areas across the state and across the country. So Mark and Joel, or Joel and Mark, I'll toss it to you.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see the April 2020 slide.
Okay. All right. So where we really got started with Dementia Friendly was with the Washington State Alzheimer's and Dementia Plan and the Dementia Action Collaborative, who are the folks who are implementing that plan. Dementia Friendly, promoting Dementia Friendly throughout the state was part of the Washington State Alzheimer's and Dementia Plan. The Spokane Dementia Action Team really decided to take a look at introducing the Dementia Friendly to Spokane in October of 2018. Mark and I are going to kind of fast forward a little bit because we only have 12 minutes. So we kind of talked about how the history of that last year at this conference. Now we're really going to provide you with an update. So Mark, do you want to start us out?
Absolutely. Thank you. We have organized our work around the toolkit, recognizing it as a guide, but really honoring its 4 phases of convene, engage, analyze, and act. And so where we left off in our conversation with you a year ago was we were in phase 2. And in February, we talked about how in February 2020, Meredith Hanley was with us in Spokane. It was really an instrumental time for us to bring her to our location. And she connected us to 2 other communities that were doing dementia-friendly work, had been a bit longer than we, and were of similar size and so forth. And so by April 2020, we were moving more deeply into that Dementia Friendly America phase 2, that of engaging our community. And so that's our first bullet, and Joel's going to handle the next couple of bullets.
So we decided to become the Spokane area dementia friendly community. So that encompasses basically all of Spokane County. That was the group decided to take that on for the county. We applied for and received designation as a dementia-friendly community in April 2020, and I believe Meredith can correct me. I think we are the first in the state of Washington. We're very proud of that to receive that designation. I'm going to turn it back over to Mark for the next slide.
Across the summer of 2020, we moved more deeply into the engage, that phase 2, and a subcommittee, the Dementia The Community Engagement Subcommittee worked to finalize our survey. We modeled that after some work done in the state of Nevada, and we consulted with Meredith Hanley in really finalizing our survey content. We elected to go with a single survey for all of our 7 sectors rather than the individual sector surveys. Our sectors are community services and supports, the healthcare community, the faith community, residential communities, local governments and agencies, and people living with dementia and their family care partners. That survey was finalized, and we devised a process and timeline for disseminating that survey, again, entirely during the COVID environment. Next slide, please, Joel. Again, the survey was completed and it was distributed through SurveyMonkey. And we did some paper surveys as well through our local Meals on Wheels organization. And there were some other action team members that distributed some surveys electronically as well. We received responses from nearly 400 individuals through influencers and just as many different folks as we could. We distributed that survey as deeply into these 7 chosen sectors as possible and beyond. That was during the through October of last year. And Joel, next slide.
Okay. So the next thing was, well, let me back up just a little bit and comment, and you'll hear how we dealt with this a little bit later in our slides. But one thing we recognized, we really didn't have the input from people with memory loss, people living with dementia, and their caregivers, and that we really wanted. We had tremendous, 400 people is a lot of people, and that was a good turnout. But we as we began to crunch the numbers, we recognized that we're probably going to need to get some input a little bit later on. So we were able to utilize students from Whitworth University here in Spokane to help us to crunch the numbers and turn data into information that we use to draft our priority goals. And we shared that with our action team. Our action team is really what we call our big group, the overall group of dementia-friendly volunteers here in Spokane. Mark, I think you're up next.
Okay, and then we moved into phase 4, again, which is sharing the results with the community, and then to really write an action plan and begin to implement that action plan. Again, recognizing that all of this just gets us to the starting line of, again, beginning to do that work. I would mention real quickly that our 3 overarching goals, priority areas, were the first was to increase community members' knowledge about the warning signs of dementia. We heard that from the community. We also heard that the community felt a need to increase the community's awareness of resources and organizations that can help support people living with dementia and their families. Thirdly, we understood that increasing community members' skills for interacting with people living with dementia was a third priority area. And finally, hospitals and the acute care sector and people living with dementia indicated that to increase dementia-related resources tailored to our diverse and underserved populations was a priority area. So how to take all of this to the community during a pandemic? We would have rented an auditorium and, said, you all come. We would have provided lunch and, sent people off into corners of the room to discuss the priority areas and come up with some ideas, and could not do that. We did organize 2 community-based Zoom meetings where we really essentially did that. We shared with the community, this is what we heard from you throughout our survey. here are some ideas we have to begin moving these priority goals forward. And what do you think? And we asked them for their feedback. We had a different group of Whitworth University students and a Brigham Young University, Idaho a student helping us intern with that process. Joel, next slide, please.
Okay. So then this is where we went back and we did focus groups to try to gather some input with people with memory loss, people living with dementia, and their caregivers, so that on what we had as priority goals. This was kind of our way of getting their feedback and their input into where we were going. About that same time, we developed a marketing and communications subcommittee that has been helping us to provide information to the community and also to gain input from the community as well. Mark, you want to talk about the action plan?
Sure. Again, within the ACT phase 4, we've written a 3-year action plan. 3 years seem to be long enough and yet not kind of we're going to keep it open-ended. So we chose 36 months. We have 8 priority goals. I'm not going to outline the additional 4, but I mentioned 4 earlier. We pulled 3 out of what we heard the community say to us, and we added, so that's 7, and we added an 8th goal that came from just some community energy and a champion to work on that goal. This is high level, and probably the one lesson learned, we heard this from Meredith's visit in February of 2020, and if we can say one thing, keep it simple, keep it manageable, and that is going to dog us this whole way. You know, we can want to eat that elephant all at once for wonderful reasons, but these 8 goals seem manageable for us. Joel, please, next slide.
So one of the things we'd like to point out is that here in the state of Washington, the Dementia Action Collaborative and the Alzheimer's Association and other partners were able to get the legislature to authorize funding for what's called the Dementia Catalyst Program. And it's funding from the Dementia Catalyst Program that is going to help us in part in the implementation of our goals for Dementia Friendly. This is happening, the funding is flowing from the Aging Long-Term Support Administration to Aging and Long-Term Care of Eastern Washington. And Mark is the person who is the point person on that funding.
And my clock tells me we've got about 30 seconds. So there are really 2 sides to that funding. One side is a community-focused side of engaging additional partners, trainings, helping build the dementia-friendly effort, and resources for families. We have hired a Dementia Resource Catalyst. That person will start their work with us on Monday. And then there are the 4 categories of dementia-capable services. We will contract with the Alzheimer's Association for a full-time position to work on some of those. We will take on some of those internally through a dementia care specialist, modeling what has been done in the state of Wisconsin, some work with tribal entities as well. And Joel, we've got another slide. If you can, actually one more. And the local, the effort that we've begun so far with volunteers and this state funding will be dovetailed together as we move forward. And I think our time is up.
Great job. And I had you clocked pretty much right at 12 minutes or just a little over. So Britta, I will turn it next to you.
Thank you. Give me just a second here to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Britta Willson. I am a gerontologist by training. I co-chair the Aging in the Gorge Alliance, and I am the lead for both our dementia-friendly and now age-friendly efforts. I want to start out just by providing a little bit of background about the communities in which we're working and serving, as well as how the Aging in the Gorge Alliance came to be and how we got involved in this dementia-friendly work. So I share this map of the region in which we live and work. We are really a regional bi-state group covering both Washington and Oregon. And there's a lot of diversity in these communities, and yet we're all very interdependent on one another, which is why our efforts cover both states. I'd say like the average age of people in the gorge, we have about 23% of people that are over the age of 60, but this does vary greatly amongst the different communities. For example, Hood River, which is a much younger community. A lot of people move there for like outdoor recreation purposes. About 13% of that population is over the age of 60, compared to directly across the river into Washington in the Loiacono area. There's about 30% of that town's population is over the age of 60. So a lot of variety, and we're all either rural or frontier communities. The Aging in the Gorge Alliance was formed in 2015 by Dr. Tina Castañeras. She's a retired palliative care doctor. And in her retirement, she started to get really interested on the lack of services and resources for the older adult population in our region. So she convened this grassroots volunteer-led group, and really our purpose is just to provide education and advocacy for elders, people with disabilities and their caregivers, and to promote the well-being of elders and their caregivers and people with disabilities. 2015, we first came together and we did a community-wide survey around issues related to aging and older adults. And then we also hosted a variety of these large meetings that were kind of done in a World Cafe style to really identify some key needs and interests. And from that, we formed subcommittees. Originally, they were on housing, transportation, multi-generational activities, caregiving, and outreach. In the following years, we did a variety of different fundraising and grant-seeking activities, and really focused on forming partnerships with various organizations in our area, including The Next Door, which is a nonprofit that focuses on families, particularly in the Latinx population, Providence Health and Services, our local senior centers, Radio Tierra, which is a Spanish radio station, AARP, and then also our community college and some other organizations. And then it was in about 2018 is when we actually became designated as part of the Dementia Friendly Communities Network. We are currently the only dementia-friendly community in the state of Oregon. And then we do also cross over into the Washington side of the gorge. The reason why we felt called to join the Dementia Friendly Communities Network was in 2017, the Oregon Alzheimer's Association put out this infographic that told us Alzheimer's disease was the 6th leading cause of death in Oregon. It talked about the financial impact of dementia caregiving. And then it was really this final piece of data that spurred us into action. And it was at the time, nearly 60% of people with dementia live in their own communities, and 1 in 7 lived alone. That's concerning, I think, anywhere, but it was of special concern living in a rural area. Thinking about somebody with dementia living alone in isolation without access to transportation or other services or resources. And even if we could connect people to, say, like a memory care facility or some other kind of long-term care, there's just not very many out here. There's not enough beds, there's not enough facilities, there's not enough in-home caregivers to provide that care. So we realized it was really up to us as community members to step in and ensure that our community has for people who are living with dementia, and to also find ways to provide meaningful engagement so that they could continue to be a part of our communities. So in February 2018, the Aging in the Gorge Alliance, we convened our community yet again. We did another survey that was more specifically focused on issues related to dementia. And then we had community discussions to identify like the goals and the specific sectors that we wanted to focus on. We formed an action team that had people from a variety of different backgrounds and agencies. We had case management from aging and people with disabilities. We had occupational therapy, behavioral health, long-term care workers, people that worked in hospice, as well as community members who either had lived experience living with dementia or lived experience providing care for someone with dementia. When we submitted our application, we had letters of support from Aging and People with Disabilities, our Area Agency on Aging, Greater Oregon Behavioral Health, Hood River Valley Adult Center, One Community Health, the Oregon Home Care Commission, as well as our regional non-emergent medical transportation brokerage. We've also received verbal support from law enforcement, libraries, public transportation, centers for the arts, and churches. And since then, all of those different sectors have received trainings on dementia provided by members of our action team. This is our logic model. I share this. This is really like our guide for what we're doing. I would recommend anyone that's looking to do this work or who's already doing this work to create a logic model. The beautiful thing about the dementia-friendly model is it's extremely broad. There's so many different things that you can do, and that's a really positive thing, but it's also extremely overwhelming. It's even more overwhelming when you are just a small grassroots volunteer organization. So we had to get really realistic about what are our goals, what resources do we already have, what activities are reasonable to expect a group of volunteers to do. And then we have our outputs and outcomes. And so we're constantly in this cycle of trying to figure out like the things that we want to do, how does it relate to our overall goals and how reasonable is it? If anybody is interested in creating a logic model, I'm more than happy to share the template that we use and the guide that we use to create. Some of our successes currently. So when we first started this effort, we started with a community-wide book reading. That's actually a pretty common activity that we do for the Aging in the Gorge Alliance. So we purchased a total of 350 copies of a book called Memory's Last Breath by Gerda Saunders. It's a memoir written by the author who herself has Alzheimer's disease, and so it's her writing about that experience. And we distributed those books for free through our local libraries and senior centers, and then facilitated book discussion groups throughout the Gorge. We've assisted in fundraising for the Alzheimer's Association. We've created a caregiver support group. We continue to provide evidence-based health promotion classes, including wise and powerful tools for caregivers. We host community conversations around a variety of topics, including dementia. We worked with a local playwright who wrote a play about dementia and love in later life, which was performed by a local adult theater company. We've created a memory cafe in partnership with our local history museum. That was done in 2019. In 2020, because of the pandemic and the difficulty with being able to do things in person, we started a monthly newspaper article called Through the Eyes of an Elder. Every month is a different topic, typically written by an older adult themselves. And we've also written about dementia-friendly community and living with dementia in that newspaper. And then we continue to provide various advocacy and education presentations. So far, we've done it to law enforcement, fire departments, libraries, county commissioners, public transportation, city councils, health councils, senior centers, our community action council, healthcare providers like Providence and One Community Health, as well as different civic organizations like Rotary. Looking into the future, we right before the pandemic began, we were going to start this new thing called Dementia Friendly Businesses, where we were going to go out to local businesses in the Gorge, ask them to make some environmental changes if necessary, and then train their staff in dementia friendly practices. And then once they completed that, they were going to get like a little logo decal to stick in their window to safer space bring people with dementia into. That kind of stopped at the beginning of the pandemic, but we're going to start that back up again. We also just very recently joined AARP's Livable Communities, which is also known as an age-friendly community. And we're looking forward to seeing how the age-friendly and dementia-friendly models can overlap and support one another. And then in true Aging in the Gorge Alliance fashion, we are getting ready to do another book reading, community-wide book reading. This one will be a book called Together by Vivek Murthy. This is not specifically about dementia, but it is about the importance of community and social support. So again, just finding ways to build community, rally people around, and have us really understand that we are the ones that we need. Like, we have to rely on each other to really provide care for one another. This is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions or need any kind of support. The Aging in the Gorge Alliance is really big on collaboration. And again, if you need access to that logic model or advice on how to create one, I would be happy to do that as well. And that's everything from me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Britta. And Flavia, I will turn it to you, and I will chime in again at the 5-minute mark and then at the 2-minute mark for that sense of timing. So it's all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if I can share my screen here. Pardon me. Okay, and okay. And I always put it on, I want to put it on the presentation and I can't see it.
If you move your cursor to the right, about 4 little spots there at the bottom,
Yes,
it looks
I
like
see
a
I see
or
it.
go 2 spots more, I think, to the right.
Is it slide sorter?
Nope, one more right there. Slide share.
Got it.
Should do it.
Well, that's okay. We can do it this
Yeah, I
way.
can do it. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there it goes. Just a little slow. Okay.
Okay, but it's all the way at the end. I don't want it there. I'm sorry.
No, you're all good. Yeah, I think just hit the up button.
I can't find the up button. Oh, here we go.
Oh, yes.
Let's just do it this way. And if it's okay with everybody, it works for
Sure.
me.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay,
fine. We can
great.
see that. Okay.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Dementia Friendly America, Prince George's County, Maryland. And I want to give you a little context. In 2015, we became one of the first dementia-friendly pilot communities, sparked by personal experience of the then sitting county executive, whose wife had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. We reside under the umbrella of the Department of Family Services Aging Division. We identified a community lead to organize the initiative. It's a decentralized, volunteer-led model. The county's divided into 3 dementia-friendly areas. We've identified a community liaison who's the conduit between the county DFA leads and the community lead. A lead was selected for each area. The leads identified action teams for each area that represented the particular area, and I will show you a map of the county so this becomes clearer. The action teams guide the Dementia Friendly America programs to meet the needs that are the unique needs of each dementia friendly area within the county. And we operate with money allocated from the county budget. And the that budget is divided among the 3 areas to support programs and activities, not salaries. We're all volunteer. And this is the county. You'll see it's divided into North County, Central County, and South County. And these are the names of the people that are in the particular positions right now. The demographics of the county become very important. Prince George's County is a predominantly African-American county. Almost 1 million people in population, and you can see the population breakout. Prince George's County is a recognized jurisdiction located in the footprint of the nation's capital. It's acknowledged as the wealthiest African-American majority county in the United States. You see the median income, this is 2019 census, is $84,000, almost $85,000. The median value of owner-occupied housing units, over $300,000. It's a very diverse county and becoming even more diverse in all demographic variables. There are 27 municipalities, the largest number of any Maryland county. It encompasses almost 500 square miles. It has an urban atmosphere, but there's considerable wooded, rural, and undeveloped areas, and also significant bodies of water. All of this becomes important as I go forward and what we've done and how we've done it. And despite the affluence, the physical health and health disparities remain a major concern, which is why the Dementia Friendly program is so important in our county. Of the almost 1 million people, 14.5% of the county population are 65 years old and above. That is also important. And you can see on this map, North County, Mid County, and South County, and all those little words that you probably cannot distinguish, but that's just to show the concentration of incorporated towns and cities within the county. And you can see the preponderance of them exist in North County. There are a few in Mid County and very few, there are only 4 in South County. And South County is the area that I lead. It's the largest in area, but it has fewer resources than the other 2 areas, particularly as they relate to seniors. These are the council districts, just so you can see how they're divided. And again, South County has the fewest number of county districts, so our representation in the county council structure isn't as great as the other 2 areas. Here's just a partial list of the accomplishments that we have done. Traditional memory cafes, and we've also in South County adapted the memory cafe model into a Remember When cafe, which is a very specific adaptation, a cultural adaptation, so that we incorporate particular things from the cultural experience. And that's how we have developed our activities and the whole model for our Remember When cafe. For an example, our meals reflect foods that are traditional foods in our community, but prepared in a very healthy way so that they become a model for the care providers in terms of the kinds of foods that you should be serving your loved ones, etc. The music, the art, everything is culturally oriented. And it's really amazing to see some of the folks come in with their care providers and put on some of the music and all, and they get up, they love to dance, they go back in time, we play music from their era, and they just come alive, and it's just wonderful, wonderful to see. They're engaging with one another, they're engaging with their care providers and making memories. They may not remember it when they leave, but they're having a great time while they're there. Since the pandemic, the virtual experience has not worked well with our folks who are living with the disease. So we've had to pivot everything toward the care provider and for seniors in the community as a preventive kind of measure. So indirectly, we are impacting those who are living with dementia, but we are providing the information through care providers and other seniors and other interested community members to be conduits for that information. So we have a Train Your Brain, which meets twice a month. We do a lot of games, we do a lot of music, just current affairs, all kinds of information is provided and fun. It's a fun activity. It's an opportunity for people to remain engaged with one another. And it's very popular and it's growing in its popularity. And so far, the evaluation of this has been very positive.
You have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. We've started a grief group. We're all in some stage of grief. So this is an opportunity for the community to come together, to share their experiences, their concerns, and to receive information about coping skills, et cetera. We've also started a caregivers group for men who are caregivers, which is also very important and growing in popularity. These are in addition to our regular caregiver groups that we have. We've provided memory screenings. We've secured grants from foundations and other local funding sources. We've partnered with community legal services and private law firms to provide services for under elder law. We've conducted many workshops on dementia for the community, caregiving, certified dementia practitioner training, demystifying dementia community forums on various topics, targeting various community sectors like the faith community, civic associations and HOAs. We are planning some for health providers as well as for first responders with whom we work very closely. And we've participated in or implemented caregivers retreats, community health fairs, community forums, National Senior Citizen Day activities. We launched Purple Worship Services, which I talked about yesterday, which are services designed especially for those individuals experiencing cognitive decline, their care partners, news support groups, monthly newsletters, which are also filled with all kinds of information and education about dementia, about resources that are available, et cetera. Volunteer appreciation days, monthly activities at senior homes, monthly presentations or trainings at our action team meetings. We work very closely with first responders. They make presentations at our action team meetings on safety tips, and we're working with them with the fire department on locks that are safer than the keyed deadbolt locks. We have a research committee that provides information on available research, research opportunities so that more of our community can become part of research studies. We have been trained to be Dementia Friends champions. Our volunteers are trained to become dementia friendly. And we convened along with a community service organization, a training opportunity for over 900 young people. These are junior and senior high school students on dementia, and they are now getting ready to be trained as dementia friends.
And now you have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, and our challenges, we are all volunteer. Lack of funding, lack of visibility within the county government. Everybody, all the divisions in the county government are not aware of our existence. So lack of funding is always a problem. Lack of support staff. As I mentioned, we're all volunteer, so we do all of our work. We need things like brochure, a website, and other social media. And we need to be designated as either a county, a private, or a 501c3 entity. The one thing that I think that we've learned, the biggest lesson that we've learned is you have to be able to meet the needs of your particular community. Our DFA action teams are all different. The activities within each area are different because our county is so diverse. And each of the leads and the action teams have worked to meet the specific needs and fill gaps within the particular area that the lead and the action team, her action team serves. So we've addressed different things, transportation, faith community, and they all look differently in each area, but we have done it. One of the big things we address are myths and stigmas within the communities that we serve. So those are big pieces that we address. But again, you must be able to meet the particular needs of your community and be able to adapt extant information and materials, or be able to develop your own with messages that are culturally relevant, respectful, and appropriate for the communities that you serve. And thank you very much. And I will put my contact information in the chat.
That's super. Excuse me. Thank you all for each of your presentations. And Flavia, you can also take down the screen share when you have a chance, and we'll get to see each other with a little bit bigger webcams, but this is great. So what Mary Grace asked me to do was just provide some kind of synthesis, so kind of general commentary on those presentations, and then also to share info about a relatively new resource available through DFA, which I think ties into some of the remarks from the speakers as well. But again, we do want to do a Q&A, so go ahead, type any questions you have into the chat box if you have any. And then that'll help to guide the discussion. But just a few thoughts to share based on what folks here shared. When Joel and Mark spoke about the Spokane area Dementia Friendly Initiative, I think that the term Spokane area is critical because it also spoke to a decision point that a lot of communities need to discuss early on, and that is what's your geographic coverage area? And that's not to say your decision on day one has to remain the same in year 5, for example, because we have at times seen community initiatives grow or expand their areas as they have community partners come to the area from maybe the adjacent town or adjacent county. But at the same time, as you're kind of planning out your initiative, you do want to be planful about that geographic area, and also think about potential future growth, because sometimes that has implications on your branding. So if you call, if you kind of brand and have a logo and it's really specific to a town, but later you want to broaden out into a county, then that's a consideration for changing branding and the like. Also, Spokane spoke some about the flexibility of the model. I think they spoke about how they did one survey that was used across multiple sectors. The DFA community toolkit outlines specific surveys for each sector. And that's kind of the whole point about DFA and the community toolkit. These materials are Word documents and they're meant to be customized. So as folks use the tools, oftentimes we learn at DFA what's working, what's not, what can be improved. But that's welcome. That's encouraged. Make the toolkit work for you. And of course, we do our best to make it work for you as well. But they're customizable for a reason. Also, in terms of the sense of keep it simple was a comment that I think Mark said during remarks. I know as we were kind of bringing some other communities to that planning meeting, one of the planning meetings in February 2020, I called in a couple colleagues from other dementia-friendly communities, and they both said, we started out a little complicated, and we had this really kind of hefty structure. I had a lot of committees. It was a 30-member action team, and they found that it got a little unwieldy. And so over time, they looked at how to make that effective. So if you don't, so it's okay to start small and grow as you need to. You don't have to start large. It's up to you, but just keeping that in mind, because I think that's been a lesson learned across several communities. And with Britta's remarks, I thought that spoke to the importance of kind of being systematic and being organized and having that logic model. And that parlays exactly into this resource I want to talk about, which is an evaluation guide for communities. But it can feel overwhelming. And I know Britta said that because there's so much you can do and so many ideas that can come to the table that you do need to be kind of have structure and align it with your community's needs, but also your community's assets. And what's feasible and realistic. And I thought that was a really excellent point, especially for dementia-friendly communities that are very volunteer-based. Some have more institutional support and more staff support or more grant funding, and some have less so. And that's normal. That's part of this initiative, is we see a lot of variability, but based on your model and what you have at the table, then developing plans around that so that you can achieve those aims and perhaps develop loftier aims as you get more resources. And just reacting off of Dr. Walton's remarks as well, I thought that was so critical, sharing the data and sharing how even within a county, there can be diversity between the North and Central and South counties, and therefore unique needs, and therefore unique programming and unique efforts in those areas, as well as your commentary on the Remember When Cafe and the supports for male caregivers and foods reflecting traditional yet healthy food types. I thought that was really neat. Also, that research committee, I'd love to hear some more about, and training 900 youth is really, really impressive and so neat. So maybe you can share a little bit more about that in the Q&A. So I think with that, I will I'll facilitate some dialogue. We have about 10 more minutes, 9 or 10 more minutes. I did see one question. I know Mark answered it in the chat, but it was about partnerships. But I thought I could pass that to the group to perhaps expand upon in terms of your current partnerships, or partners you'd perhaps like to develop, anything along those lines. And just so we're not talking over each other, let's start with Spokane and then the Gorge region and then Prince George's.
Joel, do you want to take that?
Yes, I mean, first of all, we looked at different sectors within Spokane as to what might be sources for potential partnerships. We looked for people who could make warm introductions to us, and I think that's one of the reasons why we had such a good showing with our survey. Were because of the partnerships and some of the key partnerships. For instance, Providence Healthcare here in Spokane is one of the big players in our community. The police department, our sheriff's office, another example. So yeah, those are just, you had the Area Agency on Aging, which, Mark is a staff member. You had the Alzheimer's Association. It's really going out there and setting those up. But by the same token, our Dementia Friendly also has a lot of caregivers and on it as well, the users of the services as well. So it's a mix.
Any additions, Britta?
I think our most active partnerships kind of continue to be our local senior centers, Providence, Greater Oregon Behavioral Health, as well as working a lot with our local transportation providers. I'd say a newer kind of partnership started the local high schools. They are doing volunteer work for us. They haven't been completely trained in the dementia friendly work, but that's something that we're looking to do in this upcoming school year.
That's great. And Dr. Walton, maybe you can chime in next, but also jumping off of what Britta just mentioned about high schools, maybe you could add a little bit more detail about that,
Sure.
The students that were trained.
Sure. We partnered with a community service organization that works with, that has a focus area on youth. And they liked what we were doing with dementia. So we came together and talked about how we could forge something that was new and innovative in the community and in our county. So we decided that we could train young people because they need to know about dementia. It's a lifelong issue, and people need to know about it from cradle to grave. So we jumped at the opportunity to train, and it was wonderful. The community organization had this really super duper technology with, all the rooms and the, everything. And the kids loved it because that's what they like. But they really resonated with the information. And many of them had personal stories to share about caring for relatives or identifying people in their communities who had behavior that they didn't understand before, but now they understand that it might be dementia, and how they might handle it, that kind of thing. So it was really very informative, and now we're positioning ourselves so that we can train them to become dementia friends.
That's excellent. A question I have really is about technology and the greater use during COVID. Of course, we're all here on Zoom today. If any of the speakers, but also folks in the room, you might want to chime in on chat. Like, what do you see as the role for technology and engaging people through dementia-friendly community initiatives? And if you're using technology in any of your programs, how's that going, or kind of any lessons learned you have? I see a note from Debbie that Britta can talk about how she used Nextdoor. So Britta, let's start with you on that note.
Sure. So I can talk about those. So as far as technology goes, like we definitely started moving like our community conversations to an online format, as well as our evidence-based health promotion programs that we do. And in the beginning, we weren't getting a lot of participation, understandably. And I actually ended up reaching out to Senior Planet. I don't know if people are aware of that resource, but I would highly recommend it. They offer free like technology troubleshooting for people. They have like a 1-800 hotline that you can call. And then they actually offer programming. And normally it's done in these like tech centers in person, but they have also moved virtually. So we were able to partner with them, and we offered what's called like a virtual essentials technology class, where we actually were able to teach people like how to use Zoom, how to use telehealth, how to spot fake news. And we are going to, in February, actually start offering those in person, hopefully, fingers crossed, depending on how the pandemic goes. And then as far as like how I used the Nextdoor, so the Nextdoor is a nonprofit organization that we have located out here in the Gorge, and they have a lot of different programs that focus on family, but they are primarily focused on the Latino population. So we use them to make sure that the materials that we're putting out are culturally appropriate. They do language translation for us. And then they also help us a lot with outreach. They're kind of considered sort of like a gatekeeper organization to our Latino population, especially with our migrant farm workers. So they already have those established connections. And so we really primarily utilize them for outreach. And they also help teach classes and facilitate community conversations and the book conversations.
Thank you. Flavia, were you going to say something?
Yes, we had difficulty using technology, particularly with those individuals who were living with cognitive decline. Plus, many of the individuals who were living in senior facilities were not allowed or were not able to access technology because either they did not have the capability within their particular living quarters. And if they did not, they were not allowed to gather during the height of the pandemic. They were quarantined. So that posed a problem. With those individuals who were living at home and being cared for by a family member, many of the family members were still working and unable to guide their loved ones as they were trying to use technology. Even changing times for activities and all just did not work well. So we had to focus, to pivot, to really focus on the care provider or other community members, hopefully to provide them with information that they could use for their loved ones.
That makes sense. And there's also an extra comment from Britta in the chat that you may want to peruse. Anything, Mark or Joel, you'd like to add to that before we conclude? We have about a minute left.
Why don't I jump on real quick here? Of course, our most intensive work has occurred entirely in the pandemic environment. And so We have relied entirely on Zoom for all of our engagement. And that's just a piece of technology. I'm also going to paste our website into the chat. We have a whole web area inside at this point of our area agency on aging. That would be us, aging and long-term care. We have a staff member, our community outreach specialist, who is a part of our action team. She maintains that, and she does our social media as well.
All right. Well, thank you. Joel, were you going to say something?
Yes.
Okay.
One other thing that Mark and I didn't really talk about is we recognized that we wanted to start to implement some things right away, even during the planning process. So we did put together a subcommittee that was looking at things that we could, that low hanging fruit that we could get off the ground now, as opposed to waiting 12 months to get things started.
That's a great point. All right. Well, I have us officially at 2:25 Eastern Time, 11:25 Pacific. So I think we shall conclude so we stay on track. And Mary Grace, I'll turn it back to you.